Newsroom, I'm your host, Umar Khalid. But today is the 9th of November 2022. These are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of the show. We will begin with the COP27, climate change, climate justice. All that has been highlighted by our Prime Minister during COP27, during his address to the different nations that form part of the COP27, and the responsibility that lies now on the international body, the global world that we know it, towards Pakistan after these floods. As we all know, as our Prime Minister, our Foreign Minister have highlighted time and again on different fora, Pakistan has been a victim of circumstances due to climate change. Pakistan is not a carbon emitter as much as other countries in the world are. Pakistan emits less than 1%, around 0.8% of carbon. Nevertheless, it has been the worst affected because of the climate change as a result of those dastardly floods that have affected more than 33 million people and submerged 1/3 of Pakistan underwater. The cost of the rehabilitation alone will be around $30 billion US. Nevertheless, there is a report by the World Bank that has come very recently that talks about Pakistan needing $348 billion US for climate and development challenge until 2030. This is going to be our first segment. What is the international community's responsibility as far as Pakistan is concerned after these floods, as Pakistan has been a victim of climate change? Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the 41st session of the Universal Periodic Review about India that is happening today as we speak. This event is taking place in Geneva, where Indian human rights are going to be reviewed. Also, this review is going to be conducted by Nepal, Sudan and Netherlands under the auspices of the UNHRC. Now, this is very important. Why? Because we've been highlighting it time and again. The world might be mum on it, but Pakistan has been one of the countries that has been adamant as far as highlighting the atrocities that have been perpetrated by the Indian authorities, by the Indian forces in the Indian Hill Valley, where Muslims as a community have been subjected to various forms of brutalities and torture, whether it be jailing the Kashmiri leaders, muting the voices of the journalists that have been talking about what is happening in the Indian Hill Valley, or raping the women, or violating the rights of the people of the Indian Hill Valley, and also changing the demography of the region. These are just some of the highlights and the laws, the number of laws that have been put and implemented as far as the Indian Hill Valley is concerned. Therefore, this Universal Periodic Review becomes even more important, and we need to highlight it because we also need to highlight to the world what is happening in the Indian Hill Valley. This is going to be our second segment. Then we are going to talk about the United States of America, the midterm elections there, Republicans who are edging closer to securing a majority in the US House of Representatives, while control of the Senate does hang more or less in balance. There was a red wave that has been staved off by the Democrats. The Republicans have captured at least 210 House seats, 8 short of the 280 needed to wrest the House away from the Democrats. But there are, of course, some contested seats that still remain in the balance. This is going to be our third story. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about the situation as far as Palestine is concerned. In the latest escalation of violence, a Palestinian teenager has been killed during armed clashes in the northern occupied West Bank city of Nablus. This was 15-year-old Mehdi Hashash from the Balata refugee camp in Nablus. We hear about these atrocities every day, and there are so many similarities between what is happening in Palestine and what is happening in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So this is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the responsibility of the international community post the floods, post COP27, and post Pakistan's highlighting of the fact that it needs as much of international aid as possible because the floods that have happened in Pakistan are of no fault of Pakistan. More in the following report.
In monsoon season of this year, the world watched in horror as Pakistan was struck by unprecedented floods that rendered over 33 million people displaced and around 1,700 dead. At Mega Climate Summit COP27, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif urged the international community to come together to create a common charter of the survival of planet as he highlighted the ravages of floods in Pakistan. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif became the center of attention at platform of the Conference of Parties as he robustly campaigned for the world's action to address Pakistan's climate change challenges and underlined that Pakistan would need debt relief and would seek compensation for climate damage as it recovers from catastrophic floods that cost the country some $30 billion. Pakistan, as chair of G77 group of developing countries plus China, pushed for loss and damage finance facility to be established and become operational. Pakistan is grappling with aftermath of flood of biblical proportions. The international community must not leave the country to fend for itself in dealing with this unprecedented disaster, since Pakistan Pakistan's floods are only the tip of climate change iceberg, and tomorrow it can be another country. Pakistan's contribution to global greenhouse gas emission is negligible, but it's facing deadliest consequences of the changes caused by those emissions.
Umar Farooq, who's a policy analyst, joins us in the studio. Umar, thank you very much to have joined. It's a very important topic, and it's, I think, our responsibility to highlight it as much as possible. Now, I would quote what our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said while making a statement at COP27. He said, and I quote, "We have to fight and rebuild a resilient and adaptive infrastructure which can only be done through additional funding, not loans. But the financing gap is widening by the day." When our Prime Minister highlights this financing gap that is widening by the day, do you feel that fora such as COP27 have had any effect or change of heart as far as the foreign bodies are concerned, and the fact that Pakistan needs as much of help as possible from them?
That's very important here to note that the international community has already been speaking about climate relief for countries for more than a decade. However, those pledges that have been made, they have not been followed through with. The international community committed $100 billion in 2009 per year by the year 2020. That hasn't materialized. That was COP15. That was 12 years ago. These focusing events, like the floods in Pakistan, these events, they are going to become more and more catastrophic as time goes on, as glaciers melt. The 33 million people that are affected, that is like half the population of the United Kingdom, being completely on the street, on the road, with no food, no housing, no infrastructure. And again, as you mentioned, this is something we are not responsible for. Pakistan is a developing country which has a very, very small carbon footprint. So before these floods, the country was under, under a degree of pressure from our friends and from international lenders to live within our means. Our former financial minister highlighted this as well many times, that we should live within our means. However, the damages that these floods have caused, that is 10% of our GDP. That is the entire year's tax collection of the whole country. So Pakistan cannot and should not be forced to pay this sort of a price for actions that the country hasn't committed. We can only take responsibility for what we've done, but we cannot take responsibility for what decisions are made in other capitals around the world to decide to pollute.
When our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Sahab or our Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Sahab talk about climate justice, how important is to make the world realize the importance of this term, climate justice?
The problem with climate change, again, is that the developed countries that are the main polluters, they are not at the brunt of, they're not bearing the brunt of the effects of the floods, of the displacement that is happening. Bangladesh, for instance, has recently gotten soft loans from international lenders based on the same principle to encourage debt swaps, so that rather than paying back international lenders in foreign currency, which is already short, the money should instead be utilized for rebuilding, rehabilitation, and reconstruction of the country. So this is something which the Prime Minister has clearly stated, that we cannot be saddled with more debt. Pakistan's carrying capacity to carry the debt that it has is already stretched. And it's not stretched because the principal amount is too big. It is stretched because the rate of interest that is charged is too big. Our debt to GDP ratio is less than a third of that of Japan, for instance.
But isn't it time that the world realizes what the whole issue of discussing the term climate justice is, to make the world realize that they need to be more cognizant, more responsible towards the plight of countries such as Pakistan. But are they? Will they?
The countries around the world, they have made a pledge, but they have pledged many times before.
Remember the two recent pledge, the $160 million US and then $816 million. What happened to them? The money didn't really pour into the United Nations, did it? Despite the two important pledges made by the UN.
Exactly. This is something which has been a recurring issue. for developing countries like Pakistan and among other countries, that whenever an international disaster occurs, there are pledges that are made, but they're not followed through with. These floods, they should be a wake-up call for decision makers all over the world that this climate justice, if this is not addressed, what the sort of migrant crisis we have going on from Africa to Europe, this is a national security issue for the whole world. If people are hungry, if people are homeless by the tens, even hundreds of millions, this is not something which policymakers in Western capitals especially should be ignoring.
But you know, Omar, that brings you talked about hunger. That brings me brings to mind food insecurity. This is also something that Pakistan might be witnessing in the coming months if the world does not help Pakistan. We know the amount of crops that have been destroyed, the amount of livestock that has been destroyed as a result of these dastardly floods. Do you also have some kind of cognizance or understanding that the world realizes that Pakistan's food insecurity might also reach a certain level, a certain red line, if they do not help Pakistan?
The problem of food insecurity, millions of acres of farmland were washed away, coupled with the Russian-Ukraine war, that has blocked a fifth of global grain exports from reaching the market. That is going to cause potentially massive hunger and starvation, not just in Pakistan, but in Africa, in many other regions of the world. 1.6 million children are at risk of death in this country. And the response we've seen from the international community has not been what it needs to be.
But what is the reason for that?
Because the international community has made pledges and broken pledges for years and decades. People in the 90s, for many years, people thought maybe climate change itself is not man-made. But this message needs to come home. This message needs to be internalized by both the public and by world leaders, that climate change is a matter of survival for humanity. And it is, in fact, it is an atrocity that it is not being taken up as seriously as it should be. We see pledges followed by more pledges and more empty, broken promises. But the international community needs to step up and needs to support Pakistan.
As an analyst, Umar, what do you foresee as far as the consequences of the floods in Pakistan is concerned? We've talked about food insecurity. You've also tackled the humanitarian catastrophe, disease outbreak amongst the women, children and men who are suffering from the floods, and of course the access to proper sanitation and water, clean water to all of them. Then also Pakistan was exporting a lot of crops such as, for example, rice, that has also been hampered because of these floods. What are the other consequences that you feel could happen if the world does not help Pakistan?
The worst possible consequence is social unrest. Is social unrest among the tens of millions who are still homeless. They're homeless, they don't have any food. In fact, it is a testament to the patience of the Pakistani public that we have not seen levels of rioting that, for example, when Hurricane Katrina hit the US, even though it was a fraction of what these floods are, there was rioting, there was looting, there was anarchy. We haven't had that in Pakistan. That shows that our public, our general population is very patient with the way things are going. However, there is a limit to patience. When you're hungry, when tens of millions are on the road, crimes will spike. Crimes will spike. This can actually disrupt the fabric of society. For instance, if Pakistan isn't given debt relief, and we cannot afford a Sri Lanka-like situation here, for instance. If we don't have any fuel, if we don't have any food, we're already on the brink of social unrest. And this is a very volatile region. We are right next door to Afghanistan.
And we cannot go to a tipping point, you know, or beyond a tipping point, because it's very important to conserve Pakistan's sanctity, and for that the world needs to be one in help. I mean, I'm not saying that the world isn't helping. We have had so many aircraft full of food and shelter for all those who've been affected by the floods that have been coming. Hundreds of flights have come from across the world. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that in the long run, the amount of money Pakistan needs, for example, the 30 billion US dollars that you've pointed out. And I'd like to add something over here as well. The World Bank talks about Pakistan needing 348 billion US dollars for climate and development challenges between the years 2023 and the year 2030. And of course, they say this is equal to 10% of the cumulative GDP of the same period. This is a very, very, very strong and important sum. And if the World Bank says so, it must have had certain statistics and facts and figures to come to this point. All of these reports that come, the world body reads them, all the important countries, organizations in the West read them. Are you optimistic as far as help to Pakistan, monetary help to Pakistan in the form of debt swap, of debt restructuring is concerned? Will that happen?
That's a very important question here. The resources, financial resources currently available to the government from pledges from lenders and the government's own tax collection abilities, we can only meet, as of today, $39 billion of that $348 billion that we need. We don't need just inflows. We need relief as far as debt payments go. Debts can be rescheduled.
True.
This is something which is not revolutionary. It has happened before. We've had our debts rescheduled after 9/11 by the Paris Club, and that led to the boom of the Musharraf era. There was more money, more resources available for the economy. This debt relief, if it does come to that, if we get our debts rescheduled, for instance, we're not asking for a haircut. We're not asking lenders that please forgive us the principal amount that we owe you. We're just asking for a delay in the interest payments on certain kinds of loans, which the finance minister has actually said that we will not ask for that from individual creditors. This is only sovereign loans, sovereign debt, which is owed to other countries in foreign currency, in dollars, that we are only asking for a delay in the interest payment. So this, I believe, can happen. This is not something which is out of the scope of international financial negotiations.
Do you feel also, you talked about that in the beginning, but do you feel that the world body needs to revisit the 2009 COP agreements that we made, the pledges that were made, including the one of the US 100 billion per annum by 2020, that has of course to date not been realized, that you also pointed out in the very beginning. Do you feel a lot of revisiting needs to be done by the important countries in the West?
Definitely, like the gap that we have just for Pakistan in the report that you highlighted, the 348 billion that we need in 7 years. Currently, we're only able to generate 39 of that. So we need, in Pakistan alone, something like $50 billion a year. This is just one country. So the pledges that were made of 100 billion, they need to be revised drastically upwards. That 100 billion is a drop in the ocean when it comes to climate change. And if this does not happen, the losses that will come from catastrophic climate change will be in the trillions of dollars. Pakistan is expected to lose a fifth of its GDP by the middle of the century if nothing is done, while our population is going to grow by 50%. So real incomes are going to be cut by half. In a country where already most people are just surviving on subsistence incomes.
All right, I mean, that is a very important point, and that needs to be, the world needs to understand we are talking in a language that is understood by the majority of people across the world. This is being highlighted everywhere. But let's hope some kind of sanity prevails amongst the countries that can make a change for Pakistan. Now, our country, our Prime Minister participated in a loss and damage meeting as well. They talked about clearly defining climate climate finance as new additional sustained resources with a transparent mechanism. Then, of course, our Prime Minister also during his statement called for the creation of a global climate risk index for all parties of the UNFCCC, where the projects should be prioritized, and speedy, of course, approvals need to be given for climate finance. Summing it all, do you feel COP27 has rung an alarm bell for humanity, for the world body, for all those countries, 100 plus countries, almost 200 countries that are part of COP27? Should we expect tangible results this time?
The events of COP27, they were a huge focusing event. They have generated a new zeal. The head of the UN was sitting with our Prime Minister and our Foreign Minister, and he's been advocating for this for several months as well. We should be getting some positive results out of this. I'm not sure that we're going to get exactly everything we need, but Pakistan will be getting some form of tangible relief to avoid catastrophe, really, national catastrophe.
I mean, that is, I hope that it doesn't come to that. The world has seen, has heard what Pakistan is going through, through all the visuals, through the visit of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres as well, and also through the statements that have been made by our Prime Minister and our Foreign Minister. And I hope that the world realizes and acts before it's way too late. Thank you very much, Umar Farooq, policy analyst, to have joined us, to have talked to us about a very important topic, and that is climate change and how it has impacted Pakistan, and how the world needs to realize that whatever quagmire Pakistan is in is of no fault of Pakistan. So those countries who are responsible need to act fast and need to help Pakistan before it's way too late. Thank you so very much, Umar, again to have joined us. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our first segment. Our second segment concerns the 41st session of the Universal Periodic Review about India that is happening today under the auspices of the UNHRC in Geneva. 3 countries are supervising it, and they are going to review the human rights abuses by India. How important is it in this current context? We'll be discussing that in detail, but before that, let's watch a short report.
India's democratic decline is becoming evident as the country is gripped by grave human rights abuses, including extrajudicial killings by police, torture, arbitrary arrest and detention, violence against minorities, unjustified arrests of prosecution of journalists, and censorship and blocking of internet. India's escalating repression of Kashmiris has rendered Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as most dreaded prison of the world. India is one of the states to be reviewed by the UPR working group during its upcoming session taking place from 7th of November to 18th of November, which marks the beginning of a UPR 4th cycle. India's human rights record will be examined by UN Human Rights Council's Universal Periodic Review Working Group for the 4th time. Hindu nationalist BJP has fostered religious polarization since coming to power in 2014. Right-wing Hindu groups have launched attacks on minorities. Several Indian states have passed or are considering anti-conversion laws that challenge the constitutionally protected right to freedom of belief. In 2019, Indian government passed a citizenship law that undermined India's secular constitution by excluding Muslim immigrants from neighboring countries from naturalization. Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir remains world's most militarized zone, where Kashmiris are facing an unending ordeal of terror and trauma. Hence, United Nations must conclude its review in accordance with the information in the reports of independent human rights experts and Kashmiri freedom groups and expose Indian assault on fundamental human rights.
Now, to discuss that in detail, we've been joined by Kashmiri leader and activist Altaf Hussain Sahab. Altaf Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us.
Thank you.
Altaf Sahab, one of the organizations from here, KIR, has been extremely important as far as this report is concerned, that highlights the atrocities that have been perpetrated by India. And this is the 41st session. Today, India's case is being discussed by 3 important countries in Geneva. You and other colleagues have been part of the discussion as well. What were the outcome to date of those discussions? What were the points that were highlighted?
You see, today India will be reviewed, and I think when we are talking just now, the Indian review will be taking place in the UN Geneva by the working group, that is the Human Rights Council. member states as well as the observer states will take part in that, and also the civil society. The troika for this is Nepal, Sudan and
Netherlands.
They are the troika for this. You see, the process already more than 200 international NGOs have submitted their parallel reports to the Human Rights Council about the Indian UPR, and the process India has made from the third cycle of UPR to this. Unfortunately, when we go to the data, when we check each and everything, we find that India has not been successful in implementing the recommendations which were asked to be implemented in India. Actually, this UPR process is that the country concerned or the state is in a way is being asked to improve its human rights record, and the UN also provides technical assistance for that. It's all of the, you have to make your laws, your domestic laws in line with the international conventions, international covenants and other human rights mechanisms. That's why the submissions from the civil society stakeholders were compiled, which have come forth so far. They have been distributed in the UN, and the countries will, and also some of the countries like USA, UK, Belgium, Slovenia, and I think Germany and Canada, they have also asked some advanced questions to the government of India. Most of the recommendations which have been formed by the civil society and UN, and also by the questions of advanced questions by the certain countries, they are about the ratification of the Convention on Torture, which India has not ratified so far. Although India promised it in the first cycle of UPR, in the second cycle, and also in the third cycle that they will ratify it, but they did not ratify it till date. They did not ratify the Convention against the enforced disappearance, and similarly, India has not acceded yet to the Convention against discrimination against violence against women and girls. And also, there are other set of laws that the India has introduced in order to victimize the political, the people who are politically opposed to the Indian government, who are the human rights defenders, the journalists, and all. For that, they have used they are using UAPA for that.
And UAPA is not the only black law that is being used.
And then also the Armed Force Special Power Act, National Security Act, Public Safety Act, and many other laws which India says that it has introduced these laws to counter terrorism, but the international civil society has asked India that India has been misusing these laws in order to suppress the freedom of expression and opinion in India as well as in occupied Kashmir. My organization, Kashmiri Institute of International Relations, has been submitting the UPR submissions from last 4 cycles, in last 3 cycles, and also to this. And we also recommended with all, we documented the human rights violations which India has been committed, and the laws they have framed in Indian occupied Kashmir to facilitate those human rights violations. We asked the government of India to repeal the Armed Force Special Power Act. We asked the government of India to repeal the Public Safety Act, also UAPA, release all political prisoners which have been incarcerated in Indian jails and have been slapped by UAPA. We call on government of India to release the human rights defenders like Khurram Parvez, Asim Nadu, and journalists like Fahad Shah, Asif Sultan, and Sajjad Gul, and others who have been victimized by the Indian agencies. And this process, we have to wait what will be the outcome, what the Troika has decided, how many recommendations government of India will be awarded, and how many recommendations they will accept, and what will be the course of action of the working group, that is the countries who are the members of the Human Rights Council. Actually, this is the phase where Human Rights Council has to come in order to make India accountable for its non-compliance with the UN human rights systems. You may be knowing that during last 1 year or last 2 years, at least 19 communications by special procedures to the government of India have been sent in order to correct certain laws which are not in contravention, which do not contravene with the international human rights standards. But we have to wait what the government's response will be.
But you know, in all of this procedure, in all of this review report, this is the fourth, of course, time that India is being reviewed after 2017, and this is the first time after 2019, the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A, that this review is happening. What are the chances of India applying all the recommendations that will be put to it at the end of this review? And B, whether India accepts it or not, do you feel some kind of pressure can be put on it by the UNHRC, by all those countries that form part of it, that can influence India directly or indirectly?
You see, it is the responsibility of the member states of the United Nations Human Rights Council that they should pressurize India to comply with the UN human rights systems, to accept the recommendations and to adopt those recommendations at their national level. But having said that, if we go to the previous UPRs, with conduct of the government of India during the past 3 UPRs, we come to the conclusion that the India is the most arrogant state I have witnessed during the UPR cycles in the United Nations Human Rights Council. Last UPR, they were awarded 252 recommendations, and India accepted 52 of them, that they will 152 recommendations they accepted, they will do it, but they have not done anything about that. They have only made some progress in 3 of the recommendations, or
3 of the 152 recommendations,
and that too are about the lesbian and gay rights and all that for that purpose. You can see that India, you know, there is a caste-based discrimination in India, there are anti-conversion laws in India, there are many things which are in contravention to the international human rights standards. But the government of India time and again says in the council that we have our own mechanisms, corrective measures, we can take our own, we don't need any external advice. This has been the reply of the government of India during the 3rd cycle of UPR. This has been their reply in the first and second cycle of UPR. And we have seen that India is I think, one of those countries which is not complying with the international human rights mechanisms. India was asked during the 3rd UPR to facilitate the visits of the special rapporteurs and mandate holders of the United Nations Human Rights Council. Because some of the special rapporteurs, if I'm correct, from 1994, the special rapporteur on torture has been asking government of India to give him a chance to visit India, to investigate the cases of torture in India, and from that time many rapporteurs changed, but till date India doesn't allow any of the rapporteurs to go there, because India knows they allowed in 2012 and 2011 and 12 two special rapporteurs, that was special rapporteur human rights defenders and special rapporteur summary execution. And I remember Christoph Hans, may Allah rest his soul in peace, he died. He presented a very beautiful report on India and said that this Armed Force Special Power Act overrides the right to life and it should be abolished. And he gave a very threatening report in the Human Rights Council. And then Indians said, Mr. Special Rapporteur, behave like Special Rapporteur, not like Special Prosecutor. Oh. And I remember those words of Christoph Hans always are in my ears. When I met him, he said, you look funny, what they are telling me, they want to say me that, what they want to say. I will not say that. So these people are the people of repute. They always say. Similarly, the Special Rapporteur Human Rights Defenders, she also gave a very report, a very good report on the human rights situation in Kashmir, and also she was in Srinagar. She met at that time the civil society and also the then State Human Rights Commission, which was in occupied Kashmir. But after the meeting with the chief of the Human Rights Commission, that Human Rights Commissioner was removed from the post. Why? He advocated for the rights of the people of Kashmir. That has been the Indian stance since now. We know India will play a dodge in the council. In the council, they will accept the recommendations,
and then they will not
at the end of the
apply
day,
any
they
of
will
those.
come to the conclusion that India has not applied. Unfortunately, what we have seen so far, this UPR system, which was designed to give an even playing field to all countries to improve their human rights record, while the others will scrutinize their record. This has not fulfilled those prerequisites which it was to. Because it is again, now we see the countries will ask questions to India. They will say, India, you do this and do that, but they will have to put pressure on India. India should feel the pressure. It is time of accountability. It is not the time just to tell India, because the way in Indian occupied Kashmir we see how the whole leadership and human rights defenders and the journalists have been caged and have been the sedition charges have been leveled against them. They have been terrorism charges have leveled against them. This is totally nonsense on the part of India, and the world knows it, and everybody knows it. But the Indian government will go by this, that these are they are related to the terrorists and all those activities. They will keep on talking on this, unfortunately. But at the same time, when we go to the after 5th of August position, the way they changed the demography in Kashmir
and continue to change the demography
continue
of the region.
changing it. It is against the Geneva Conventions, is against the UN security resolutions on Kashmir. So this is the responsibility of the UN Security Council as well as the working group which is reviewing the Indian human rights record, that they should pressurize India on certain level to abide by its international commitments, because India has made commitment in the United Nations Security Council that people of Kashmir will be given the right to decide their political future. And also it is in the UN Council that India cannot change, anybody cannot change the ground situation, the material changes on the ground. But what India is doing, the way
it's totally contrary to the United Nations resolutions.
The domicile law, the way they have put the Kashmir as a real state before the Indian tycoons, and they will come and get the land in Kashmir, make Kashmiris landless, jobless and homeless in their own land. So Kashmiris have been turned from citizens to subjects in occupied Kashmir.
Basically slaves in their own their own residence.
The international community must take note of this, and I hope that good sense should prevail, that people should ask the government of India tough questions regarding this, not the ordinary questions which are being asked during the UPR process. Similarly, when it comes to the India, the way they introduced that Citizenship Registration Act and put the whole of the Muslims and Muslim population at existential threat, because and then we see that each and every act which is being done against the minorities in India, especially Muslims, Christians and Sikhs, it is state condoned. It's not that it is happening something, it's all state condoned, because the people at power, they are the people who make hate speech, who are involved in hate crimes. So there are recommendations from certain civil society groups to the government of India that all those people at the helm of affairs, public servants who are at the helm of affairs, they should be made accountable for their hate crimes and hate speech.
But you know, this accountability seems like a very distant reality unless and until organizations like the UNHRC, the United Nations, take serious cognizance of these human rights abuses, of which there is a whole list. I mean, just look at the whole number of human rights abuses that are being perpetrated on the people in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, from equality rights against equality, rights to life, liberty, security, and the list goes on and on. Amnesty International's chair of board in India, Akar Patel, says that the India's 4th UPR arrives at a time when human rights and critical institutions, independent media houses and civil society are facing systematic attacks in the country. This assessment presents a crucial opportunity for UN member states to peer review India's human rights records and to hold the country accountable for its abuses and violations. Will it happen? I mean, that is the whole question mark, you know, at the end of it. What we want is something to happen, something concrete to happen. Should it happen?
So
will it happen?
Omar, if you go to the civil society report, you will see the international civil society has been very active in this report, the way they have highlighted the atrocities committed in India and the loopholes in the legal system of India. They have highlighted all those things, the loopholes in Indian system. Now it is responsibility. Then responsibility lies on the member states. The member states should not wait. I always say, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. It should not be on the part of the member states. Then this UPR process will become a mockery, because if a country like India, which has been responsible for such brutal human rights violations in Kashmir, if India is not being made accountable for its crimes against humanity, then what is the fun of making this process or reviews and all that?
Then, if you make these processes, make them go through the entire way and make India accountable for all the human rights abuses, of which there is a huge list, of which so many reports have been made. You just talked about so many reports recently being made as well. Let's hope better sense prevails. We can only hope for the best. Your organization has also helped make the world understand that, and I hope that and other organizations also make the UNHRC realize and put pressure and exert pressure on India. That is much needed. Thank you very much, Altaf, Hussain, Wani Sahab, to have joined us, to have talked to us about this 41st session of the UPR on India that is taking place as we speak in Geneva. 3 countries are supervising it: Nepal, Sudan and Netherlands. Thank you, sir, to have joined us. Let's hope for the best. Let's come to our last 2 stories, ladies and gentlemen. The first concerns the US midterm elections. Of course, Republicans are closing on US House majority. Senate is still up as far as grabs is concerned. There are 33 House contests still to be decided. Republicans, as you know, had captured 210 House seats. Edison Research has predicted that 8 short of the 218 that are needed to wrest the House away from Democrats. And of course, change Joe Biden's legislative agenda. There are 33 House contests yet to be decided, including 21 of the 53 most competitive races. The fate of the Senate of the US is more or less certain. Either party could seize control. A split would mean, ladies and gentlemen, that there could be a Senate majority could come down to a runoff election in Georgia for the second time in 2 years. Even, ladies and gentlemen, a slim majority would allow Republicans to shape the rest of Biden's term. Biden has, however, acknowledged that reality on Wednesday, saying he was prepared to work with the Republicans. Let's see what happens. A lot of new changes might happen as far as US politics is concerned. We will know in a couple of days' time. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's take you to Palestine. We always highlight the atrocities that are being perpetrated on the Palestinians by the Israelis. Now, a Palestinian teenager has been killed, 15-year-old Mehdi Hashash, when a hand grenade blew up in his hand during an Israeli army raid on Nablus. This is during clashes and confrontations with the Israeli army after it raided the northern occupied West Bank city of Nablus. Israeli forces, ladies and gentlemen, have killed at least 195 Palestinians, including 47 children in the occupied Bank, East Jerusalem and Gaza Strip since the beginning of this year. That is an atrocious number. Close to half of the total people killed have just been from Jenin. Tensions are, of course, increasing since the 1967 occupied territories since early this year, and we are seeing an unending increase in these escalations. We just hope that there are 2 important issues that confront the world apart from the Ukraine-Russia war, and that is because that is very recent, but the ones that are happening since some decades, that is what is happening in Palestine and what is happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. These 2 issues need to be tackled with the utmost urgency for the benefit of the people, to end all the abuses that are happening in these 2 respective regions. We try to highlight as much of that as we can through our shows, and I hope the world is listening. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you, inshallah, tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. In the meantime, help the flood affectees any way which you can through a simple text on 9999, by donating 10 rupees, or through other measures, through the armed forces, through our government agencies, and through all the philanthropists and NGOs that are working diligently to that effect. Allah Hafiz.